Welcome to Alma Tales Lab, where lying wives and sneaky girlfriends finally get exposed. From girls' trips that never happened to coworkers who were a little too friendly, we break down every red flag, messy receipt, and suspicious text with humor, shock, and just a little bit of petty. Expect wild stories, dramatic reactions, and satisfying karma as the truth comes crashing through the door. If you love relationship tea, plot twists, and seeing players get played, this channel is your new home. Every single chaotic, jaw-dropping, binge-worthy episode. Hit subscribe and never miss a fresh dose of exposed cheating. Don't forget to check our previous stories. Let's get into it. My wife invited her ex to our family dinner and introduced him as the upgrade, then smiled while everyone laughed like my marriage was a joke. Here's how it happened. I'm Malik Harmon, 36, a logistics and compliance manager outside Northern Virginia, the type of man who plans routes, tracks risks, and keeps receipts because that is how you keep disaster from spreading. I used to think that mindset made me too careful for love. Nia made me believe the opposite, until she turned my calm into a target and my loyalty into a punchline served with sweet tea and dinner rolls. Nia and I met in Washington, D.C., at a charity gala my company sponsored. She was the brightest person in the room, without trying, sleek dress, warm laugh, and that confident way of asking questions that made you feel seen. She told me she built her small beauty brand from her kitchen table, and I believed her because her hands moved like someone who knew exactly where every piece fit. I offered her my coat when the night air got sharp. She teased me for being prepared for everything. I smiled and said, "Only the things that matter." Our early dates were romantic in a way that felt effortless. We did late walks along the wharf, splitting caramel popcorn from a paper bag, laughing at couples who tried too hard to look perfect. We went to a tiny Ethiopian restaurant where she insisted I try everything, then watched my face like she was collecting evidence that I could be happy. One night, she dragged me to karaoke in Adams Morgan and made me sing a slow song I did not know. I sounded terrible. She clapped like I was headlining Madison Square Garden and said, "Confidence is a skill, Malik." The funny moments piled up like little stitches holding us together. I once tried to surprise her with breakfast and burned pancakes so badly the smoke alarm screamed like it had personal trauma. Nia walked in, saw me waving a towel at the ceiling, and laughed until she had tears. She took a bite anyway, chewed once, and said, "I love you, but never do this to me again." Another time we got lost in IKEA for 2 hours, arguing over which couch matched our future. We left with candles and zero couch. When we got married, I thought I had found peace. We moved to Prince George's County, Maryland, closer to her family. Sunday dinners, birthday cookouts, card games that lasted too long. Nia loved hosting. She loved how family filled a room. I did too, even when it was noisy, because she would squeeze my hand under the table and whisper jokes about her uncle's dramatic stories. In those days, even the chaos felt romantic. I would wash dishes while she danced in socks, humming, turning the kitchen into our private stage. The shift did not arrive like thunder. It arrived like a slow drip. Her mother, Yvette, started testing me with comments that sounded like jokes but landed like stones. "Nia could have married a doctor, you know," she would say, smiling. Or, "Malik is so quiet. Are you sure he loves you?" Everyone would chuckle, and Nia would sit there, pretty as a magazine cover, letting it happen. Sometimes she joined in, tiny laughs, little shoulder shrugs, as if my discomfort was just a seasoning on the meal. I tried to handle it like an adult. I pulled Nia aside after dinners and said, calmly, "Your mother talks to me like I'm a visitor in my own marriage." Nia would tilt her head and act confused. "You take things too personally," she would say. "That is just how she is." Then she would make it worse by framing it as my weakness. "A strong man would not care," she'd add, as if my dignity was an optional accessory. I started swallowing my reactions because arguing with a smile is a losing sport. The first time I noticed the phone, it was small. Nia took it everywhere, even to the bathroom, even to check the mail. If I walked into a room, she'd angle the screen away. When I asked, she laughed. "I cannot have privacy," she said, like my question was childish. Then she kissed my cheek, sweet and quick, like a bandage slapped onto a cut she pretended not to see. I told myself I was being paranoid. I reminded myself we had history. I reminded myself we were married. The new friend she mentioned sounded harmless at first. Darnell reached out. Nia said one evening, stirring pasta like she was discussing a weather update. He congratulated me on the brand. My stomach tightened, but I kept my voice even. Your ex. She nodded and rolled her eyes like I was the one being dramatic. We are adults, she said. Do not be insecure. Then she leaned in and kissed me, slow and familiar, using romance like a curtain to hide what stood behind it. For a while, Nia still gave me little romantic scraps that kept me hopeful. She surprised me with a weekend in Baltimore, waterfront hotel, crab cakes, a walk through a museum where she held my arm and told me stories about her childhood. One night, back in a room, she laughed at my carefully packed travel bag and called me the checklist man. I laughed too. It felt like us again. But even there, her phone lit up like a heartbeat on a monitor. She glanced down, smiled to herself, and turned it face down. The disrespect got bolder. She started correcting me in front of people. Malik is not good with social things, she told her friends at brunch. He is more spreadsheets. They laughed. I smiled because it was easier than asking for respect and being told I was too sensitive. At home, she became colder in private. If I tried to talk, she'd sigh like I was wasting her time. If I asked for closeness, she'd say I was needy. But if her family was around, she'd wrap her arm around mine and perform warmth like it was part of her outfit. The family dinner that broke me started like any other Sunday. My Aunt Denise's house in Prince George's County smelled like seasoned chicken and warm bread. I brought drinks, helped set the table, and greeted everyone with the same respectful calm I always used. Yvette kissed her teeth when she saw me and said, "Look at Malik trying to be useful," like I was a child playing grown-up. Nia did not defend me. She laughed softly and adjusted her hair. I felt the familiar sting, but I told myself to stay steady. The food was almost ready. The room was full. Then the doorbell rang. Nia moved fast, excited in a way that did not belong to a normal guest. She opened the door and came back in with a tall man in a fitted coat, smile sharp, eyes scanning the room like he already owned a seat. Nia's hand rested on his chest, casual and intimate. "Everybody," she announced, voice bright, "this is Darnell." She paused, letting the silence form around the name. Then she smiled wider and delivered the cut like it was a toast. The upgrade. The room erupted. Real laughter, not nervous laughter. My stomach dropped through the floor. I looked around and realized some of them expected this. Yvette's face held zero surprise. Marcus, Nia's brother, barely looked up from his phone. A cousin whispered, grinning, like this was a storyline they had been waiting to watch. Nia pulled out a chair, my chair, and guided Darnell into it. She slid my plate down the table, away from the center, like I was an extra guest. I stayed quiet, not because I was weak, but because I could feel my anger trying to take the wheel. And I was not going to crash in front of people who enjoyed watching me bleed. Nia leaned close, her perfume soft, her voice softer, and whispered, "Do not ruin this. Be a man for once." She said it like my dignity was something she could trade for attention and still demand more from me later. Darnell smirked across the table and raised his glass slightly, like a salute. Yvette laughed and said, "Well, at least Nia finally brought someone with presence." That word, presence, hung over me like a verdict. I felt humiliation spread through my chest, hot and heavy. Still, I kept my face calm. I cut my food. I chewed. I listened. The dinner kept going as if I were invisible. They asked Darnell questions about his job. They complimented his watch. They laughed at his stories. Nia touched his arm when she laughed, the way she used to touch mine. At one point, she joked about my quiet personality. "Malik is great at moving boxes," she said, smiling, "but he does not know how to lead a room." Everyone laughed again. I stared at my plate and thought about how love can turn into a stage where you are forced to play the fool. I remember thinking very clearly, I will never beg in this room. When we got home, Nia acted like she did not just detonate our marriage at the dinner table. She kicked off her shoes and asked me if I could stop by the store the next day to grab a few things. like we were normal, like I was still the man she could command. I asked, "Why did you do that?" She rolled her eyes. "Because I can," she said. "And because you needed to see you are not the only option in my life." No remorse. No apology. Then she said the cruelest part with a calm smile. "You will get over it. You always do." Over the next few weeks, she made sure I did not heal. She invited Darnell again. Cookouts, quick pop-ins, business advice, meetings that lasted too long. She would talk about him like he was a solution and I was a problem. If I tried to set a boundary, she called me controlling. If I stayed quiet, she called me weak. Her family backed her up with small humiliations. Yvette calling Darnell baby. Marcus joking that I should take notes. They never once checked on my feelings. They never once asked if I was okay. It was a coordinated erosion, and they moved like they had practice. I kept going to work and doing my job because routine was the only thing that did not insult me. At the distribution site, my days were numbers and deadlines and small control chaos. I liked that a plan either worked or it did not. No gaslighting, no fake laughter. During lunch breaks, I started making lists again, not out of revenge, but out of survival. I reviewed our finances with the same calm I used for compliance audits. I read every account policy. I looked at what was mine, what was joint, what was tied to bills. I did not drain anything. I did not do anything illegal. I simply prepared. In the middle of all that pain, there were moments that reminded me who I used to be. My friend Keisha invited me out for a harmless comedy night in D.C. I almost declined, but she said, "You are not going to become a ghost." I went, and for the first time in weeks, I laughed, real laughter, when a comedian joked about couples fighting over thermostat settings like it was international policy. Keisha nudged me and whispered, "See, you're still here." That small night did not fix my marriage, but it gave me something important, proof I could breathe without Nia. Nia, meanwhile, acted invincible. She spent money like consequences did not exist. Beauty inventory, new outfits, fancy dinners for networking. She used the joint account like a trophy she had won. If I asked about a purchase, she snapped, "Do not start. You do not get to question me." The disrespect had an edge now, sharper, as if she was daring me to react, so she could paint me as the villain. One night she laughed and said, "You are too stable, Malik. It is boring." Then she texted someone and smiled at her phone right in front of me. The final push came in a simple text. "Family dinner Friday." Nia messaged me during my workday. "Darnell is coming again. Do not be weird." I stared at the words and felt something in me go quiet, like a door closing. I did not respond with anger. I did not argue. I typed okay. Then I went back to work and finished my tasks like a man who had already decided the outcome. On my break, I called the bank and asked about account controls. I verified what required joint authorization. I requested the safest option. I took notes. That week, I moved with calm precision. I rerouted my direct deposit to a personal account I already had. I paid the mortgage and utilities ahead from my personal funds, enough to remove any false narrative about me abandoning responsibilities. I documented everything, saved confirmations, and organized them in a simple folder. I updated my autopays. I removed my cards from shared subscriptions. I did it quietly, without announcing a war, because the goal was not to punish Nia in public. The goal was to stop being punished in private. I was not building a spectacle. I was building an exit. Friday came. Nia wanted to host again, making it another performance. She ordered catering like she was throwing a celebration. At the grocery store, she loaded the cart with expensive items and joked loudly about treating our guests right. I stood beside her like a shadow while she acted like she still owned the situation. At checkout, she swiped the card with confidence. Declined. She tried again, frowning. Declined. Her smile collapsed into panic fast. People behind us shifted, irritated. Nia's eyes darted around like she could find a trapdoor in aisle 12. She opened the banking app and turned away from everyone, but panic has a posture you cannot hide. Then she saw the message that changed the temperature in her body. Account requires second authorization. She called me immediately, voice sharp like a knife. "What did you do?" she hissed. I could hear Darnell in the background saying, "It is not that serious," in a bored voice, like her embarrassment was her problem. Nia, try to make me feel guilty for finally setting a boundary. You were trying to humiliate me, she spat. I said, you did that yourself. She drove home furious, ready to punish me for disrupting her show. When she walked in, she expected a fight. Instead, she found silence and boxes. Not chaos, not destruction. Organized boxes labeled by room, taped neatly, stacked like a move plan by someone who respected his own future. On the counter sat a folder and a single note. All bills paid through next month. I am gone anyway. Nia laughed, still no remorse, then stopped laughing when she realized I was not performing. You think you can just leave? She said, like she was offended I had agency. I looked at her and said, I can, and I am. She tried insults because that was her favorite tool. You are nothing without me, she said. You are boring. You are replaceable. Her words were practiced, like she had said them in her head many times. She wanted me to beg. She wanted tears. She wanted noise she could mock. I gave her calm. You introduced your ex as the upgrade, I said, steady. So I upgraded my boundaries. She scoffed and called me petty. I did not raise my voice. This is not petty, I said. This is protection. She looked at the boxes like they were betrayal. Darnell did not save her. That part was almost funny in a grim way. She called him on speaker, asking him to come over, expecting him to play hero. He refused with an excuse about being busy. Then he added, casually, I did not want drama. The same man she paraded as the upgrade was suddenly allergic to responsibility. Nia's face twisted, but she still did not apologize. She turned the anger back at me. You did this, she said, as if I created her choices. I said, I responded to them. Then I picked up my keys and walked out. My private comeback did not involve speeches or social media or revenge. It was quieter than that and stronger. I moved into a clean apartment in Alexandria with big windows and a kitchen that felt like a fresh start. I bought one plant and kept it alive, which felt like proof I could nurture something again. I worked, saved, and slept through the night without bracing for the next humiliation. My money grew faster without someone bleeding it for attention. I started smiling in the mirror again. Not because life became perfect, but because my life became mine. That was the real karma. Her losing access to the stability she disrespected. Nia never showed remorse. Not once. She sent angry messages, then colder ones, then ones that pretended nothing happened. She tried guilt, then blame, then silence. Her family backed her until they realized the lock was real, the boundary permanent. The locked account was not the punishment. It was the proof that I had finally stopped volunteering for pain. Months later, I heard through a mutual friend that Nia still told people I overreacted, still called me weak, still insisted she did nothing wrong. That was fine. I did not need her understanding. I needed my freedom, and I got it, quietly, successfully, and for good. If you enjoyed the story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.